Hey guys, Matt Lewis here, Race Talk episode 3, so thank you for joining us. Before we get started, I just want to say big thank you to everybody in the Race Talk Facebook group that's helping spread the message, share the videos, and getting more people ultimately involved. And that's a big help on my part, and I can't thank you guys enough. Also, big shout out to Jason, our first giveaway winner. He won the Can-Am Go Fast Racing t-shirt, and that should be about at his house by now. So thank you, Jason. I appreciate your support, and enjoy. Big weekend, all-star race weekend, and if you were not satisfied with how that weekend went, you probably are not satisfied with any type of racing. Therefore, just don't watch. And no need to get on social media and comment. No need to get on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. Let it rest. That was a great weekend. Let's just start with the Open. Race 1, you didn't know who was going to win that. William Byron at the last second stole the show. A great running for Bubba Wallace. And as we all know, he's been struggling. But we'll talk more about Bubba and Richard Petty Motorsports in general here in a little bit. But yeah, Byron sneaking up, stealing the show. Kyle Larson running strong. You could tell that in the first 2 races, he was just showing a little more patience, just trying to keep his car clean and wait for the proper opportunity so he could run away, which he did in race 3. So good for him, and get that car and that team back on track. Since Talladega, once he rolled over in the first half of the year, they've really been kind of jumped. So now he's kind of getting some momentum, picking up the pace. We all know he's a good driver, and it doesn't just stop at dirt racing. Once that team gets what they need and works together, Larson's going to be unstoppable. I just hate to say it, but there's a lot of tracks that work in his favor, and once they get it together, he'll be flying colors. So, Kyle Larson wins race 3. Bubba Wallace takes race 2. Unbelievable racing by Bubba Wallace. That is one of the better races I've seen with that 43 car. Obviously, he's had a hard time lately. Obviously, Richard Childress. Obviously, Richard Petty Motorsports has been having a hard time for a very long time. And it's nice to see some kind of positive momentum happening their way. So again, we'll talk more about them later on in the episode. But man, just really great to see him win and get himself in that all-star race. Going into the all-star race, you had cars that were, I wouldn't say so much as dominant, but very fast, had the pace, were able to drive the car where they needed it to. The problem is where, well, not even a problem. This is a good problem to have, especially as a spectator. But I think the aero package made it in a way where you could not just take the lead and run. Eventually, you were going to get chased down. If your car was in tune and your tires were a big issue. If you wore them too hard when it was hot out, you just had to kind of take a break. Cautions aren't guaranteed. And luckily, some people were driving hard enough where they got caught up in the fence or got a fender knocked in. As we saw Eric Jones getting some debris on the field. We saw Kurt Busch hit the wall. He just was buying every inch of the racetrack that he could. And that stuff's going to happen. So, luckily, with the way those cautions fell and being able to regroup and reset, that allowed for some really great racing that also allowed for other drivers to get an opportunity. And once you saw some of those cars that hadn't been in clean air, Kyle Larson, for example, he was kind of the quiet mouse, and just kind of working his way through. And the next thing you know, he wins the race. So it was very cool to see. I'm happy for him. I hope that they can take that momentum into the Coke 600. Now, obviously, you're not going to really take much from the setup that you just saw and bring it over due to the fact that they won't have that same splitter. They will not have that same hood. And what NASCAR went ahead and did last weekend is while they raced non-championship points race, they figure, hey, let's put on a new hood, radiator exhaust ducts, and a different type of splitter that's more geared to what we're looking forward to in the Gen 7 car and see how this works. It's kind of unfortunate that they only get this one All-Star race to test stuff out like that. Meanwhile, they're going to have testing days separately and take that opportunity outside of the regular scheduled program. So I'm interested to see what this Gen 7 car actually is, because my original opinion of what I thought they were looking to do is slightly changing a tiny bit now, especially after seeing some of the things that they did just this past weekend. And it wasn't much, but it's enough to kind of veer your direction as to what's coming. And on that note, I will say this: I will imagine we will start seeing some ride height differences take place here in the next, second half of the season. I do think that's going to be a part of the package deal in 2021, is to raise the height of the car. You're not so sealed to the ground. You get a little more grip, a little more speed sometimes, and just you can get a lot more cars moving around and make things happen, as opposed to what we've seen lately. You look back in the early 90s and how low those cars are compared to today, it's night and day. So, yeah, lots of action, lots going on in that race. Like I said, if you didn't enjoy that, I don't know what to tell you. I was very happy. Larson takes the win. While Larson's doing burnouts, you got Clint Bowyer chasing down Ryan Newman. 2 weeks in a row for Clint Bowyer. It's exciting. I enjoy watching it, but at the same time, if you once everything's resolved and you get all the information, it's 2 weeks in a row that he's gotten into it for another driver for how they're driving at the end of a race. Now, with Newman, there may have been a little bit of a miscommunication, being the fact that Clint Bowyer thought Newman was a lap down. Newman was never a lap down. Newman did go through the infield, which, thanks to Charlotte Motor Speedway and installing turf as opposed to regular grass, as we have at Daytona and some of the other speedways, that saved his car and allowed him to pretty much not lose a whole lot of pace, get back on the track, and carry on. As we've seen in the past, you hit a certain divot there, the grass, you're just done for. There's no chance. It's also, and I'd like to see more tracks do this, not only is it saving your car, say you spin out on lap 4, you get bunched up, something happens. I've seen it. I've been personally to Daytona. I've watched Dale Jr. and Jimmy Johnson both spin out within the 30-lap window of the race and go through the infield and destroy their car. So if you can save a situation like that happening early on, get back in competition, that's great. I'm all for it. Not only that I've seen cars hit divots in the grass and start rotating. And next thing you know, the car's rolling over and then it's picking up momentum and carrying on like that. So, as a safety precaution as well, and saving NASCAR a little bit of money, the team owners and such, I think that's a great upgrade that they could do to racetracks. Especially, I'm not saying take everything, turn it to grass, but I think your front stretch is a great example, a good place to start, and especially where there's problem areas. Clint Bowyer, Ryan Newman, surprised by that. I was surprised in how he just literally attacked him. I mean, went right after him. I don't think Newman saw that coming. I knew he maybe expected some sort of conversation at some point, but not 20 punches to the face, pretty much. Wow. I'm going to say this too. If I were Clint, that was probably very, very smart of me to keep my helmet on. Because I think if Ryan Newman got to him, sorry, Clint, but I'd pull for Newman. He'd get you. So, hopefully that settles down. Clint needs to calm down. We saw him get into a little bit of an altercation last week with Eric Jones, arguing about how Eric was racing him, which was 4th position again in that race. So, what I think is happening with Clint is he's getting impatient. He's getting very frustrated. He's in a fast car every week, pretty much, and he's not seeing the results. He wants those wins. He wants to compete for a championship. He does not want to be reminded where he came from, and I get it. But I think he needs to be a little more patient, and when he calms down and just relaxes, I think he's going to start clicking off more wins. I think we're going to see him get to potentially 4 or 5 wins in a season. So we'll see. We'll see what happens if tempers, cool down this week in preparation for the 600. Curious to see how that goes, being that it's going to be different than this kind of racing. There was a lot on the line, $1 million. They also had very short segments, and we're going to have some very long segments at the 600. So, and if I remember correctly, they're breaking it up into 4 segments as opposed to 3, if I remember correctly. So, yeah, can't wait. I'm excited. I hope that they can continue with what they did today and put some more, emphasis on maybe some of those newer packages that they want to work with for the Gen 7 car in the next year, and get a little sneak peek of what's to come, because that's going to be the real year to kind of showcase on what you're planning on doing. So that'll basically cover us for NASCAR as far as the All-Star race, but I do want to highlight all the rumors going around about Richard Petty Motorsports, Bubba Wallace. Look, I said it last week, Bubba Wallace is a good driver. He's in an underfunded team. He's got a great owner, but they have no sponsorship. They have no, and this is my opinion, but the team that they have is what they can afford. And I feel like if they had a higher budget, they could make better cars, they could get better engineers, they could get better crew members, they could get better crew chief, put them all together. People that are compatible with Bubba, that understand his personality, his driving style, and that goes hand in hand for Bubba too. Bubba's got to be able to understand how his crew chief works, how his car engineer works, and how to communicate with them so that they can give him what he needs. So ultimately, I think that's just a miscommunication. I think that's there's no talent issue there. And we saw that in race 2. He took that car and he made it run like you haven't seen it run in a while, since his second place finish at the Daytona 500. But I tell you, he said it, no dams given, and he drove like it. So I know he took Suarez out, but at that point, you're going to be racing for $1 million. Your morale for the team has been down. Bubba has been very open on social media about being depressed and not really, feeling up to par. Very disappointed in how he's performed in the last, since the Daytona 500. And I feel for him. So I'm hoping that some good stuff comes along. But let's address some of these rumors. So, latest rumors. Richard Petty is going to sell off RPM. He's going to change it back to Petty Enterprises, and he's going to join forces with RCR. That was one variation of it. The other variation, he sells the charter of the 31 car to Richard Childress, so Tyler Reddick can get a full-time ride. I don't know the likeliness of that. That may be a possibility as well, but I don't know if they're going to be joining. So, those are 2. Third rumor, pertaining just to Bubba Wallace in himself, so he's got 2, that his family is going through, his parents are going through a divorce, and secondly, I have noticed, and someone has mentioned, that maybe him and his longtime girlfriend are no longer together, so that may be on his mind as well, and that just makes people think, well, he sounds so depressed, and he goes to the media, and when he talks, you just see it, you hear it in his voice, and I think that's a time when the media does what they do and speculate and make accusations as opposed to display facts. So that's just purely off of visual and from what they hear and running with it. So, but we don't know. They could be true. Also on the fact that, big rumor that Richard Petty will be teaming up with Mario Andretti, creating Petty Andretti Enterprises, and running with Honda. Now, it doesn't really make sense that they're going to run with Honda next year, because why? You're going to run a Gen 7 car that will debut, or is expected to debut, in 2021. So, that would be the opportune time to join NASCAR. There's been rumors of a few others. I know, by popular demand, everybody wants Dodge back in. Everybody loved Dodge. I love Dodge. They look great. Bring them back. I can't recall why Dodge backed out, but they didn't. I guess they didn't see a means in justifying spending the money to continue in motorsport on that aspect. But I really do hope they come back. Bring the Charger, bring the Challenger. It's just going to open things up, and it's going to be amazing. So, yeah, can't wait for 2021. I really want to see what direction NASCAR goes, not just from the package standpoint and the Gen 7 car, but what they're doing with the schedule that year, what new tracks will be in play. Will Nashville, I think I just read an article this week about Nashville doing a $60 million renovation or something like that. So that's obviously a sign that something is going to take place, and not quite sure what that exactly will be, but I'll keep you guys informed. On that note, by being informed, if you get the opportunity, click subscribe on this YouTube channel. If you want, click notifications so every time I post a new episode, you get notified and you don't miss a beat. Because we got a lot of cool giveaways coming up, and you're not going to want to miss that. At the end of this episode, I'm going to give a sneak peek on what the next prize will be, and we'll go into detail later on. I'll post a video on how you can win this. So, Richard Petty, all the rumors all over the place. I'm not really sure what's going to happen. I wouldn't be surprised. I think I like the sound of the Mario Andretti idea. Andretti brings a lot of money. That name, sponsors will follow. And if he could help resurrect Richard Petty and that team, boy, that'd do a lot for Bubba. That'll get them going. And I think they can find some speed. It's only a matter of time for Bubba will get a win. I'm not saying Bubba Wallace will win 4 or 5 races in a year, but hey, you never know. You don't know. I do not think Richard Petty Motorsports is going to shut down. But that being said, let's take a look at Furniture Row 2018. Halfway through the season, Barney Visser says, hey, 5 Hour Energy is backing out. They don't want to be a sponsor in NASCAR anymore. They're withdrawing. But with that being said, we will find sponsorship. We will continue in 2019. Just for a couple months later to make the announcement that they will be closing their doors at the end of the season. And Martin was running for back-to-back championships. Nearly had back-to-back championships. In fact, if Martin would have won Martinsville, Martin would have been champion. Back-to-back years. Just stating the facts. So, interested in the Coke 600. I don't think it's going to be necessarily as exciting as the All-Star race, being that's kind of like a no-hold-bar, all out, everything goes, which is kind of another reason why I was surprised about the Newman-Clint Bowyer thing is, you guys know there's going to be anything and everything, so why are you so angry about that? But it is what it is. They'll get over it. I'm pretty sure they're friends, or were friends. Maybe after a black eye from Newman, he might think a little differently about that. But I wonder if there's going to be some retaliation on the track about that. So we'll stay tuned for that. So again, going on right now is Indy 500 preparations. That'll take place on Sunday morning as well on May 26th. So we got the double race day. No NASCAR drivers this year doing both. Kyle Busch continues to talk about it. Articles, the media continues to ask him about it. But as long as he's with Joe Gibbs, I can tell you, at least not in the time being, Joe's not going to let him run that race. It's too high risk. It's too dangerous. I think that particular race right there, as we've seen in practice alone for the Indy 500 this week, multiple cars hit the wall and have to go to a backup because they were absolutely destroyed. We saw Fernando Alonso go into the wall. We saw Rosenquist for Chip Ganassi go into the wall. 2 top contenders, or supposedly top contenders for the Indy 500. Until yesterday, or Sunday night, I should say. Yeah, yesterday. Sunday night, when Fernando Alonso was bumped from the Indy 500, he did not make it in. A lot of speculation there. We're not going to really get into detail of that, but a lot of people on social media are saying him and McLaren need to go their separate ways. McLaren's not doing anything for his career and not getting him any closer to winning the Daytona 500, which is a dream of his. So, that being said, a lot of action going on. They had the last chance qualifier, the last 3 cars to try to bump their way in, and It's going to be a great race. 33 of the best that showed up to make the show. I want to say there was somewhere in the ballpark of 50 cars that showed up to make entry of the 33. And man, that's going to be a fantastic race. Top 5, you've got Joseph Newgarden in there, Will Powers in there. 3 Penske cars make up the top 5 for qualifying. Spencer Pigot takes pole. Good for him. And trying to think of who the 5th one was. Can't think about it off the top of my head, but it's going to be great. If I got to make my prediction, I would say I'm going to go with Team Penske if I'm a gambling man, and I go with Will Power for next Sunday, winning his second or third 500. I'm going to say second 500. I know he's won one. So, yeah, money's on Will Power. So if I got any challengers, let's go. Put your money up. No, I'm just kidding. So yeah, guys, again, thank you for everything. Just everything's growing, and it's growing at a pace that I like. As I get more and more episodes in, and I start doing different things, and like I said, as the studio gets kind of built up and the program, it's just going to be really cool. So I'm glad you guys are on this journey with me. I'm glad you guys show your support, and I thank you very much. Real quick, and then we're going to just do a brief recap of some of the Canadian Motorsports Park Pirelli GT4 series that raced this weekend. What a race. Let me tell you, race 1, out of the 4, let's see, this is round 4 and 5 that they did this weekend, and out of all the rounds I've seen, this was the closest I've seen the front runners together. I mean, they were nose to tail for the 5-6 deep. And that was the entire 50-minute race. It was fantastic. But before we get to that, I just want to show you guys, this is not the one, this is my version, my copy, but there's another copy that you can win, and you can win the 2018 Final Four. Did you see that? All signed from Homestead. Martin Truex, Kyle Busch, Kevin Harvick, and Joey Logano. So, you guys are going to want to stay tuned so you can win your autographed version of this. They're only going to do one more of them, people. I'm excited for Homestead, but like I said in episode 1, kind of bummed out that they booted out the Phoenix. Totally understandable. However, just something extra cool about going down there and being the championship race. I mean, first, let me tell you something. You cannot get more bang for your buck than Homestead Miami Speedway. All right, I cannot go to Daytona. For instance, I went to the July race last year, okay? Usually I go to the 500, spend the speed week there. Did that a couple years in a row. Went a couple more years for different races. I went and saw the first time I ever saw a NASCAR race was 2014 Sprint Unlimited. And at that very moment, now I've been a fan watching for 25 years, but I never had the opportunity being up in Maine. I never went to Loudon, in part because when you're on an income in another state, your wages are different. And back then, I just couldn't afford to go down to New Hampshire and all that. Well, now I'm on a different career path and much older, so now I can actually afford to get out and do things. So, but I'm not joking. I cannot go to the Daytona July race without spending $1,000 for the day. Travel, I don't want to take my truck up there, so you get the rental car and you drive 3 hours up there. You get food, your ticket. You want a good seat. You're spending $250 easy. You're gonna buy a couple things. You're in it almost $1,000 that day. Let me tell you, I go to Homestead and I spend $308. I get a buddy of mine from Maine to come down. I got 2 other buddies, one in Toronto and one down a little further south of where I live here in Florida. We all meet up there, and for $308, I get all my tickets to each race. So I see a truck race, I see an Xfinity Championship race, and the Cup Championship race. So I get those 3 tickets. I get a Champions Pass. I get a pre-race pit pass. Separately, you have to buy that separately, but it's $50. Definitely worth having. Or if you're like me, you participate in some of the events going on down at Homestead, and you find free pit passes. unbelievable experience. I've never been so close to drivers in my life. I've been in the garage, you name it, everywhere. I don't know how I make it happen, but we got a method, and we are just behind the scenes. So I am excited to have this episode, this series, because when I go to Homestead this year, that is going to be the best episode yet. We're going to be backstage. I mean, you guys will actually get to witness what I get to do, and it's quite incredible. Some of the people you meet, see, drivers you talk to. For me, it makes me feel 12 years old again, and like a kid in a candy shop. And it's just unbelievable. It's like dreams come true for an entire week. I go down there, the second gates are open, I set up camp, and we leave on Monday morning. So it's a blast. But $308, and I get my camping, I get my parking pass, you name it. You can't beat that. You can't. I take 2 hours to drive down there, and I'm happy. I will say this, if you have never been to Homestead, and you are camping in Homestead, bring a hammer drill. You cannot put a stake in the ground in Homestead to save your life. So, that's Matt's tip for the day. Also, real quick, Matt's fantasy picks, that's going to be taking off next week, so stay tuned. I am killer at fantasy leagues. I'm in 6 of them. I'm in the top 30 in all of them, leading 2 by 200 points. So, I'm going to start doing a little session on advice on how I pick those drivers. Actually, let's give that rundown real quick right now. All right, so I watched the entire weekend events. Now, obviously, qualifying is going to be before the last 2 practices, so you got to kind of find a qualifier pretty soon, and I pretty much nailed the guy that wins the first 2 rounds and not the third. So I'm not so great on the qualifying. Got the right idea, but still, I think I've won only twice. So, anyways, now I will watch all the practice sessions, and if I can't watch them, I go back and I see the stats, who was running what, how many laps do they run, how do they look, I'll find replays. Not only that, I will go by last year's information, because if you have a very fast car, dominant car from last year, and the package hasn't changed a whole lot, you're coming back this year, the chances are you're still going to run pretty solid. So that does take part. Now, you can't go solely by last year because some things show up a little differently. But usually by practice 3, by the end of that practice, and for what you've witnessed in qualifying shows you exactly on who's got speed. And that's got, obviously that's a little low range. You know, they do everything set up. You can't handle those cars. The way they set them up for qualifying, you can't run them for an entire race. More than likely you will have some sort of malfunction or failure with the motor if you do so. So, qualifying is designed for quick couple laps, kill it, and be done, and then go back to race trim. So, but that you can kind of get an idea on who's doing well. You also want to mix in drivers that you've noticed progressing and starting to do well, because not all your top drivers, first of all, you're limited to how many drivers you can use. You know, so if you get 10 uses of Martin Truex, you get 10 uses of Brad Keselowski. Well, if you say you're a Kyle Busch fan, you're using Kyle Busch every single week, you probably only got a couple races left with Kyle Busch. So you want to kind of space them out, use who you know that's their track, put them in there. Also, make sure you have a solid backup in your garage. There's been a couple saving graces this year where I've put a guy in the garage. It just so happened one of my top guys get taken out, and that guy makes a perfect fill. He may not have all the points, but he will finish with more points than your top guy ended with. And hopefully your top guy goes out after stage 1, so you can at least hopefully pick up some stage points. So that's all critical. Also, a key note. If you're doing really well in a fantasy league, like for instance how I'm doing well in certain leagues, like I'm in a league of 6,000 people and I'm running in the top 30. One thing I do to get extra bonus points and want to bridge my gap is I will pick a winner, but I will make sure that if I'm wrong on the winner that I can maybe still pick up 10 bonus points on the manufacturer by that being different. However, for instance, recently, Martin Truex, second win at Dover. I had him all across the boards from second stage, third stage, race winner. And I picked Toyota because I was pretty certain that that's how that day was going to go. And it just so happened, luck on my side, it did. So, yeah, always hit me up on Facebook too. If you have any questions about fantasy, I'll tell you who I run. I have no shame in that. So I will definitely share my picks with you guys on who I think is well worth running. And next year we'll start a league of our own. We'll get this group involved and pick some kind of cool prize to go with it. So again, guys, thank you for all the support. I said we're going to get into the World Challenge GT4s, but we're 30 minutes in, so we'll talk about that next week on their off week. But all I'm going to say is great racing. If you're not following, go to the Facebook group page, ask to join. We'll get you in there, make you a part of the conversation. Not only that, I upload a lot of videos of replays for, like for instance, the World Challenge GT4 League, and well worth the watch. I mean, they travel all over the United States and in Canada, and you see manufacturers such as McLaren, Camaro, Expo. I mean, it's which is KTM, wild looking thing. Did really well. Actually took first place on Saturday. Didn't run as well on Sunday. I think he trying to change up his strategy to save tires to make that last run because Spencer Pompelli won yesterday, and as everybody that follows that series knows, he's been a force to reckon with. He's pretty much won every race this season, except at VIR last week, had 2 races, horrible luck, blown tires within opening laps actually of both races. So we'll cover more about that and talk about how that series works and stuff. And I got a little behind the scenes at the St. Petersburg Grand Prix this year, back in March. That was really cool. Wild experience. I will say this, if you ever get the opportunity to go to a Grand Prix, it'll change your perspective on racing greatly. As someone that's only seen short track racing and NASCAR live, it's night and day. You're walking, even with the Indy guys, you're walking right next to them like they're normal people. I was walking right next to Alexander Rossi. I walked into the gates with Rosenquist day 2. That Saturday morning. We were walking side by side right into the gate. Unbelievable, and check it out. But guys, again, if you haven't subscribed, subscribe to the channel. Join the Facebook group Race Talk. I appreciate it, and yeah, we'll see you after the Coke 600.